everything got super, super quiet. I saw this tall, white, very thin line of light just move from my left to right, almost like something touched him. My name is Brian Hulen. Uh, Basically got into it through my daughter, believe it or not. She was, around that preteen age, and she kind of struck an interest in Bigfoot, paranormal type stuff, and um, we started doing a little, research online and kind of going into the woods in certain areas. And then I met up with an old friend of mine named Dustin Clark, he had posted something on Facebook about a Bigfoot group. And I didn't even know there was such thing as groups on Facebook at that time. I was so new to it all. And so I ended up joining this group and teamed up with about six of us that were part of this other national group. And um, once we really got into it, started meeting each other, we decided that it wasn't the direction that we kind of like. So we wanted to start our own group, and that's how the Southern Bigfoot Alliance came about with the six of us. And unfortunately, my daughter got a little bit older and had other interests besides Bigfoot, and she kind of walked away. But I'm still involved and still in it. So.
So what does the Southern Bigfoot Alliance do? What's your mission and what have you experienced?
So the main mission is to find Bigfoot. I mean, that's the goal. That's the sole purpose. We're a non-kill group. Not that we are against the folks that are for that or anything like that. It's just something that us as a group we decided that we're not interested in that tactic. But we're pretty active. I believe I don't know, we're several thousand members now. Shane Church and I pretty much keep it rolling now, and Tim Autry and those guys. But yeah, I mean, we stay pretty active. We do a lot of investigations, a lot of field work. We try to get out as often as possible. We have two main areas in Oklahoma that we do a lot of research in. One in southeast Oklahoma and one in south central Oklahoma.
So this is a place that you feel like there's a lot of activity.
Yeah, both places. So we have an area that we call Squatch Creek. That is the one in south central Oklahoma. That's if anyone that follows us, that's seen anything about us, that's where we have all the cast that we have taken, the 16-inch, the 20-inch that we've been following since 2018, since April 2018. We check that area fairly regularly. I was there just, about a week and a half ago. I think Shane was there a couple of weeks ago. And then the area in southeast Oklahoma, north of Broken Bow, uh, there's a little town there just to the east of 259, and that's kind of where we really got geared up for, just because of the vast wilderness there. And that's where I had my sighting. Tim Autry and I had a sighting in 2018.
Hi, I'm Linda Eastburn of Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, and I have a new book out called Threshold to Encounters. It's about 40 years of research and experience with all of these wild cryptids that many of you I know have encountered yourself. You can find it on Amazon.com. Well, tell me about that sighting that you had.
Sure. So one thing that we like to do as a group is we like to do these open invites, and that's where we invite other members to come. It gives us a chance to meet new people. And so with any group, which I'm assuming is you have the large network of people that are in your group, but then you have the smaller group that that you may do your field work with. And so having these open invites gives us a chance to meet some of these people to see if we want to kind of pull some people into our type group, where there may be 6 to 10 of us in the field doing some research. And that's what this was. This started out as an open invite, and it was a fairly successful one. I believe we had probably at least 30 people that showed up. We placed them throughout the area, different campsites, and we had just a centralized meal area where we would all meet up to cook and talk and things like that. But as far as field work and camping and overnight, we split everybody up the best we could. Um, I was fortunate, Tim Autry and I was fortunate enough to be off on a Monday, so we weren't leaving on Sunday like everyone else was. And And so Sunday afternoon, everybody's packing up, breaking camp, getting ready to leave. And we have a guy, Mr. Bill, in our group. Uh, he's a couple years older than me, and he's been doing this way longer than I ever will. But he had kind of mentioned to me about a certain area in this area that we call Bison. And he was saying, there's certain areas that you need to be looking for, certain types of trees, things like that. And we started focusing on this little hardwood area that's in this pine forest. And I've been wanting to go into this area, but I didn't want to go in with a large group. I wanted to take a smaller team in for it. So after everyone left, I spoke to Tim and I said, we should go into this hardwood area, just kind of scout it and see if we can find a place for a future campsite, where a small group of us get in there. So we drove into it, and when I say drove into it, it's just a old Jeep trail, like a logger road or something. It's very grown up, um, not heavily traveled, and it goes back off the gravel road, maybe close to a third of a mile before it dead ends. And we got to the end, and we just hopped out. We didn't have anything with us, we weren't really technically Bigfooting or anything like that. We were just wanting to basically see if this was an area that we could get a few cars in and some level ground to set up a camp. And we kind of got out, we walked around a little bit, took about, I don't know, maybe 20 yards from the pickup. And the strange thing that happened first was there was a deer and she ran right up against us, like, I mean, right by us, but she wasn't even looking at us. She was looking behind her. So we assumed that maybe a bear or maybe a coyote or something like that, or some dogs, maybe some wild dogs or something in the area were chasing her. So we just were waiting to see what was hunting her, basically. And everything got super, super quiet. And we started hearing what sounded like small rocks being thrown over our head. And this area is kind of it's on the side of a hill, and there's some little finger valleys where, like, if you were to walk down into them, you would be 8 to 10 foot lower, and then you would come up, maybe cross a little hill for 5 or 6 feet, and then down again. So you could disappear really quick right there if you were trying to hide from somebody. And it all kind of funnels down to a low area that goes back around into the pine forest. And we kept hearing these little rocks is what I guessed them at. And we started to move over that direction to where they were being thrown to. And I remember something that Bill had told me years before. He said, these things like to distract you. They like to redirect you so they can make their escape or they can move. And so as we heard this stuff being thrown and Tim walked towards it, I started to go that direction and I remembered what he said and I just turned back real quick. And when I did, I saw this head just drop below this stump. And at first I didn't know what it was. All I could see was movement. And so I started thinking to myself, and I was super focused on the stump, kind of ignoring Tim. He's kind of walking around behind me, just milling around, looking on the ground, seeing what was falling. He's thinking it's acorns, and we're kind of having a little bit of a discussion about that. But I'm not really focused on him as much as I am the stump. And another thing that Bill, and I owe Bill all credit to this because of things that he had taught me. He said, looking at them direction, face to face, it's very hard for them to want to move. So you need to use a lot more peripheral vision to make them feel safe. So I kind of turned myself at a 90 degree to where this thing was. So now I'm looking off my left shoulder and I'm looking left peripheral vision. And I see this thing just kind of raise up over the stump and look at me. And it's just a face. And then I noticed the hands are holding the stump. And then I don't know if it was me or if it's Tim moving around, but it ducked again. And at this time, I knew exactly what it was. No doubt about it. So I kind of whispered for Tim to come over, and he walks over and stands right in front of me. And I joke about this when I tell the story about it. It looks like two guys in a very intimate situation. He's so close to me. But I think he's kind of wondering what's wrong with me because I'm probably acting a little weird, because I'm not being my normal self. And so he's face to face with me. And I said, Tim, I said, I want you to use your peripheral vision. Of course, for him, it's to the right. And I said, do you see that stump out there? And it's probably 60, 70 yards from us. And it's on top of one of those little rolling hills that I mentioned earlier. And he says, yeah, I see it. And I said, okay. So I just want you to stare at that stump. And he goes, okay. So we're what felt like minutes, but honestly, it was probably just a few seconds. It raised its head again and looked at us. And when it did, Tim's body just like his body language is what really sold it to me because he just kind of trembled. He didn't even like he didn't like he wasn't still, he wasn't confused about it. Whatever it was he saw, like his mind made him kind of tremor a little bit. And I could just see his whole body shake, kind of like if you get like a cold wind or something, you kind of shiver like that. That's what his body did. And he just looked and goes, "What the bleep is that?" And I said, "Just keep looking, Tim. Just keep watching." And then went down again. And he goes, "It moved. It moved." And of course, I'm looking at this time. I'm using my peripheral vision and watching it. And I said, "I know, I know." I said, "Just keep looking." It pops up again, looks at us, pops down. And then the last thing it did is it went all the way to the ground, which is very weird. It went all the way to the ground and then went to the side. So it was like its head was on the ground. And at the time, I couldn't figure out how that was even remotely possible because it seemed weird that it looked like almost like a floating head. And so I thought, man, this just doesn't seem possible. But it was at the side and then it moved back and then we could hear leaves sliding and we just heard something just walk off, definitely bipedal, walk away from us. And so to kind of explain what that was is it's on a hill. I don't know if you can see, I'm kind of demonstrating this. It's on a slope like this, and the stump was here. So it wasn't like it was on flat ground laying on its belly. It might have been crouched down, but it was able to move to the side. So it made more sense once I got over there to look at it and kind of get a better idea of how this thing was positioned. But definitely a unique experience and very, very surprising experience. So life changing, actually. So
Well, let's get a better description of exactly what you saw and what it looked like.
sure. So being that we could only see the hands and the face, and people ask me all the time, they say, "Well, how wide were the shoulders?" Honestly, I didn't even see shoulders, and I don't know if it's I just didn't see them, if I wasn't looking at them, or if maybe this thing was turned, its body turned a certain way. I don't know, but I do not remember shoulders being anywhere in my field of view. I just remember the hands and the skin was very, very black. I mean, it was very black skin, very dark skin. Same with the face and almost like a little bit of a sheen to it. Like I don't want to say it was oily, but maybe like that, almost kind of a waxy, wet look. Maybe I don't know if it's sweat. Maybe it was mid-September. It was kind of warm. I know we weren't wearing jackets or anything like that. So I don't know if it maybe it was chasing that deer and it was just sweaty. I don't know, but it definitely had a wet look to it. The hair was dark brown, maybe almost black, and and I know at that distance, but I don't remember seeing any white around the eyes. It just seemed like they were just dark. And like I said, 60 yards, maybe you can't see the white of the eyes. The hands, mostly like human. I mean, looked similar to mine, just obviously larger. But once again, black. I didn't see anything like white or pink fingernails. If it had nails, they had to be very dark because I don't remember them standing out. And a little bit of hair like on the back of the hand, maybe going around to the wrist, and that's about all I could see. I did take some field measurements of that stump because that's the only thing I had for size reference. And the head and the stump were really, really close to being the same size. And that stump was about 14 inches wide.
That's pretty good size.
It's a big head. I have a big head. And that's kind of the running joke, with my friends and guys in the group is I have an abnormally large head. And when I say large, I mean I'm snapbacks. It's all the way out, to try to get a hat on me. But my head's not that big. So
So you said this was life changing for you. Tell me how your life changed from that point on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because when I went into the Bigfoot world, I went into it with a real 50-50, whether or not this thing is possible, whether it would, if it's real or not, and I know there's some great footage out there. People talk about Patterson Gimlin footage, Paul Freeman footage, things like that, tons of eyewitnesses. But I wasn't really sold on it being real, you know? And so whenever you run into a situation where you're face to face with something like that, that in your head and leading up to that time, I say 50-50, but I still wanted to keep the mindset that they weren't real because I didn't want everything I saw to be Bigfoot. And so I wanted to make sure that I always assumed it wasn't first, and I had to prove to myself that it was. Because I think a lot of guys get out there and they hear a stick break and they're like, "Oh, it's Bigfoot," and you hear it all the time, you see it. Um, but once I saw it, it let me know that there's so much stuff out there that we probably don't know about, and how these things can maneuver around the country, around the world, wherever they may be. And I know we have tons of witnesses, but not as many, I think, credible witnesses. I think a lot of things are misidentified, especially with bears. I think bears are probably the number one misidentification. Um, but it did change everything, and I caught a lot of scrutiny from it, from friends and family. Just the simple fact that um, people just didn't believe me. They just and that's hard to do. Whenever you're trying to tell somebody something that you saw and tell your story and explain it, and you have a witness with you, that's extremely credible guy himself, um, and then when you have people that you care about, you love, and they're telling you that they basically just don't believe anything you said. So it's life changing. It really is. It definitely put me on a different pace in life from that point on. So.
Did it encourage you to look further or discourage you?
No, it definitely kept the fire going. So just to add to that, that area of Oklahoma is very, very remote. When I say remote, it's not a campsite. It's not a pull up to the little leveled out area with the charcoal grill and the walking trails. This isn't like that. You could be out there for 3 or 4 days and not see a soul. Um, so in that year, 2018, I spent 62 nights living in that area. Not continuously, but throughout that 12-month calendar, I stayed 62 nights. So 2 of the months out of those 12, I lived in that remote area. So that added to I guess the probability or the chance encounter of seeing this thing, because I just increased my odds, right? The more you do something, the more likely it is to happen. But I didn't lose any steam off that. We kept rolling because my good friend Shane Church, and he's in the started the group with me. He's my co-host on the Cryptoholic Show. Uh, my goal now is to help him see one of these things because he wants to see one so bad. And so that's kind of lit that fire for me because I want him to experience that too. So.
Yeah, exactly. So when you encountered this thing, a lot of people talk about smells. Did you have any odor in the area at all?
No, not that time. We ran into odors, and in other situations that we've had where we thought something was near us. But in that situation, no, I think at that distance, and like I said, the way this thing kind of funnels down, I don't know if the wind, he may have been, downwind of us or something like that, or upwind of us, or um, I think what happened is, um, and I'm not a big believer in these things hunting deer. I know a lot of guys are, but I'm just not a big believer in that. I think it would just take an enormous amount of energy and calories to chase something that's that fast. But I also believe that they're opportunists. And so I don't know if maybe this little deer just sprung on him and he was able to try to make a move on it. And of course, it got away from him. And I think that's how it happened. I think we just got lucky. We happened to be in the right place at the right time. He made a mistake, moved on something, found himself in a spot where he was kind of hung up, or she, because I don't know if it was male or female. So he had to do some type of maneuver or behavior to try to draw us away so he could make an escape. So um, yeah, I mean it was a lot of luck, but I'll take it. So.
Did you find any other evidence there? Any footprints or anything else around there?
No, not that particular time. We followed up with an investigation 2 weeks after that, 2 weekends after. A small team went out there. I think there was about 7 or 8 of us that went. You could definitely see how the leaves had been pushed down and kind of as if something was sliding down, but we couldn't find anything definitive as far as footprints or anything. So
And is that area a place that you've returned to since then? And has there been any indication that there's like a clan out there or anything like that?
yeah, I would say there has to be some type of small clan in that area because I'm not the only one who has witnessed something in that area. There's been other guys that have seen things. We have vocalizations, smells, things like that that's happened to us. We camped out there many. I mean, I couldn't even since 2018. And if I said we camped 100 times since then, I probably wouldn't be stretching that, you know. And then, there's other groups within our group that go, even when I don't, if I'm unable to. So we have people there quite a bit. And so, given the history of the area with other witnesses and even witnesses that we don't even know that we're just reading reports on, there's a great report on BFRO, and I'm not a huge BFRO fan or anything like that. I'm not promoting that or anything, but there is a great report there from 1996, uh, almost in that exact spot where a hunter was in a tree stand and saw a large hairy man, I think is the way he described it, cutting across a field. So um, something's going on in that area. I mean, so
Is that your primary research area that you go to?
it's probably my favorite place to go to, just because of the scenery. Um, but I think as far as evidence goes, I like Squatch Creek more just because of the amount of footprints that we have found in that area. And in that area, we know there is at least three individuals that we have cast just because of the size of the footprint and the toe shape. So we know at least three individuals in that spot.
And they seem to be adults.
Well, one is 20 inch and two is 16 inch. And so in the 16 inch, they have a different big toe on one of their feet. So one has almost like a spade shaped toe. I don't know if that's just natural or some type of defect. And the other one has a really profound round toe. So obviously two different individuals. We speculate that the 20 inch is probably a male, and maybe the 16s are two females. I mean, I don't know if they are that human like where they have just one partner, and maybe it's a mother, father, and a young female daughter, or if they group up kind of like deer sometimes, where maybe they have two females and a male or something. So I'm not real sure on that. We don't really understand enough of their behavior to really begin to guess on that. But um, I think it's probably two females and a male is my best guess.
Have you ever had another actual visual sighting of one?
So prior to my sighting in September 2018, I thought I had a sighting that was on the top of a ridge at night. It was backlit by the moon. And I would have swore to you that was a sighting in that moment. About 2 hours later, I was driving around in there and I ran across a wild horse. And so I totally just wrote it off at that moment. I said, okay, I bet you that was probably that horse that I seen. So I just erased it from my memory. Once I had my sighting in 2018 in September, I started thinking back about that earlier sighting because that was in that same area probably within 2 miles, maybe within a mile actually. And in hindsight, I now think that original sighting was a sighting, but I don't speak about it very much because I kind of wrote it off in the moment. So
Yeah, I think that it would be easy to do because it's such a brief time that you have the opportunity to assess what you're actually looking at.
yeah, it was. I had went back and did a follow up on that. Even though I wrote it off as a horse, I still wanted to follow up because that's what you really need to do if you're going to do field research. And so we followed up a couple weeks later, and I had one of our team members stand where I saw this thing, And he said when he got up on top of the hill, we had walkie talkies, and he said, hey, he said uh, it is a trail right here that goes up over the top of the ridge. And I said, okay. I said, can you walk the trail? And as he walked the trail, it was very, very close to the path that this thing was on. And I couldn't hardly see him, just the top of his head. And he's right at 6 foot. The thing that I saw, I could see shoulders and a head. So it had to have been a foot or two taller than him, or what I tried to explain to myself in that moment after seeing the wild horse, I thought it was just the horse going up over like in line with me, and maybe I was looking at the head of the horse and the horse's rump as he was going over the top, and it kind of looked like a head and shoulders. It was in the it was in the middle of the night, so I had to give myself a little bit of grace in that, but yeah, I kind of, in hindsight now, I really, I'm probably 75% that what I saw that night was also one. So
Has any of your group had any other sightings?
as far as visual sightings, Mr. Bill has seen one at about 17 miles north of our bison area. He saw one in that location, which 17 miles is probably too far for me to walk, but I imagine these things cover some ground when they need to. We have another member, Dustin Clark, who may have seen something. I'm not real sure on his story, but it was in that same area, and I think he saw something in a thermal or night vision camera that he was looking at. Um, and then, of course, there was a guy that used to be real popular on YouTube, and I forget his name, but he posted a lot of videos of that area near Smithville, Oklahoma, is where I'm speaking about. And he has passed away since. But I remember looking at one of his videos, and there's a still in it of one of these things in the tree line. And I'm horrible with like, just don't ever send me a picture of a Bigfoot in the trees because I'm not going to find it. I am the worst at looking at photos. You have to send those to Shane Church if you want if you want photos analyzed. I'm horrible at it. But this video and this photo was very, very clear. And I remember looking at that and thinking that is exactly what I saw in that area in 2018. He had shot this video, I think around 2010 or 11. So that gives me hope that they are staying in that area for sure. So
Have you found any structures or anything, or how much do you buy into these structures that are supposedly made by Bigfoot?
yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people want to do the big X's and the trees and things like that. I find that stuff to be so possible to be so natural. Now there are a couple things that I've seen. There was a small thing that we set up a camera on in Bison. It was an interesting little small structure. It wasn't, I don't even know if you could call it a structure, but it definitely has some trees that were purposely placed there. One of the weirdest things we had happen though is the structure changed slightly, but we had no photographic proof of it changing. It just, the camera was one way and then it was another way after that. Now I don't know what that means. I'm not saying this thing's paranormal or they're saying kind of, I don't go to that part of the Bigfoot world. I pretty much stay in the flesh and blood, but something changed in that structure, whether it was natural or someone manipulated it. Um, I have found a very odd structure just right outside of Oklahoma City in an area that I go to often. Um, it's probably the most impressive structure that I've ever seen. It's 12 foot wide, 27-foot long, about 9 foot tall in the center. Everything's interlocked, no cut marks, anything like that. Everything's snapped or broke. That's probably the most impressive thing I've seen. And could it be a human? Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's impossible that a human couldn't make that. Um, but it's definitely something that I've been monitoring and watching for several years. So
Any Bigfoot activity that you know of in that area?
actually, yeah, a lot of great Bigfoot activity in that area. A lot of sightings that go back all the way to, I think the earliest one I know of is in the mid '80s from a friend of mine that told me he was at a grocery store and some ladies were uh, like on a little walking trail, and they said that they saw some hairy monkey looking thing digging in a trash can, and they called the local police. So, when you get stories like that, those are the ones I really like, because they're not Bigfoot people. They don't have Bigfoot on the brain. They haven't been watching Finding Bigfoot, for 3 or 4 seasons. And it's just a couple ladies out walking and they don't really know what they saw, but they were scared enough to call the police. So I really hold a lot of credibility to those types of stories. So,
Yeah, and it does seem like there are a lot of cases where Bigfoot's coming closer and closer into urban areas and dumpster diving, campgrounds. They're going through trash, trying to find all kinds of food and various things. Have you found that to be true where you research? I know you research in mostly remote areas, but
yeah, the area I'm talking about here with the structure is very urban. But I think what we forget is they're not coming into urban areas. We're developing their area. And so it's not like they're moving in on us. We moved in on them, and they're just trying to maintain what they can. So I don't think it's really them coming into areas. I think they're trying to capitalize on some things. And like I said, I really feel like they're opportunists. And if I'm 7 foot tall and I weigh 700, 800 pounds and I need tons of calories to keep my body going, um, would I rather run around chasing raccoons and possums to eat, or would I just rather go flip a lid on a dumpster and have some really delicious stuff? I probably would take the easy way out. Honestly, I think a lot of people would, especially if you get in a situation where you might be desperate, and you really need those easy calories. I think a dumpster would be the ideal thing. So,
yeah, I remember hearing about a case where a man would go to school grounds and they had a dumpster, and after school was out and everything, he would every time he went, he could see this group of Bigfoot in a wooded area, and they would just come over and go through the dumpster of what was left from the lunch from the school. That was a
wow,
common thing. He could just almost always see them there going through this. If he waited long enough, of course, everyone had to be cleared out before they would come out of the woods and do the
sure.
dumpster diving thing. But I don't think that's all that uncommon. How intelligent do you think they are?
Um, I don't know if I would go as far as being super intelligent as they are instinctive. Just like deer. Deer are pretty uh, masters of hiding and getting away and standing still. Deer can move 20 feet and camouflage basically. Um, I think these things are masters at that. Now, I don't think obviously they're not intelligent on the level of us because they did not evolve. They're not building real houses. They don't have modes of transportation or anything like that. So they don't have weapons other than maybe rocks and sticks. So, but as far as instinctive, they're way ahead of us, way ahead of us. I think these things can blend in unbelievably well. Uh, I bet there are so many close encounters with people that are hiking and walking that never see these things just because of their ability to do that. I'm not in the group of them cloaking or anything like that. I just think it is a natural defense for them. So,
Seen any orbs out in the woods? A lot of people talk about those.
you know, I do chase the paranormal a little bit, just because my daughter, who's now about to be 19, she's really into that. So I make sure I still keep my finger on that pulse of that, to keep that going between her and I. But uh, I've seen a really strange orb once before when we're out Bigfooting, but it was in a heavily Native American area, and I don't really know what it was that I saw when and I know it sounds strange, but I know I was talking to an individual in the woods in the middle of the night. We had stopped to take a break and we were face to face talking. And I know he was looking at me and we could see each other. There was enough moonlight for that. And I saw this tall, white, very thin line of light just move from my left to right, like towards him, almost behind him. And as he's talking to me, I'm looking at it, but he flinches and kind of jumps like something, almost like something touched him. And he stopped talking and started again. And I said, Jacob, I said, what happened? Why'd you stop? And he's like, oh, nothing. I said, no. I said, tell me what you just felt. And he goes, man, I don't know. It just felt like somebody walked up next to me and it freaked me out a little bit. And that was simultaneously. So I don't know what that was. I don't, I mean, I really don't, but it was, it was definitely, we put it down as odd, that's for sure. So
So it was a light, though? It was a
it
white
was just
light.
it was almost like, let's say like you took, you know, those long tube lights and like shop lights,
Mhm.
the fluorescent lights. Let's say you had one of those illuminated and it was probably 6 foot, maybe 7 foot in length, and it was super skinny like that, and it just passed by. Very strange.
And it was just that one person that felt it or that it touched,
Yep. And
possibly.
there was two other guys talking about 10 feet behind me, and they never saw a thing. So I don't know. That's one of the oddest things that's happened to me. I still to this day don't know what it was I saw. So I've had people tell me, I know someone told me there's a Native American word for it, not the thin man, but something similar to that. Something about something spirit. I don't remember what it was called, but uh, I don't know. I saw it. I don't know what it was. It was very strange. So
Well, Ron Moorhead, when they were at the Sierra camp at one time, saw a rod, not that long, not that tall, and it was horizontal, and it moved through the trees. He said it seemed to be intelligent. It was able to maneuver, through the tree lines.
hmm.
But that's not extremely uncommon. But I don't think I've heard of one being upright
Yeah,
and
this one was vertical.
touching
So
someone.
yeah,
Where they
and I don't know if it touched him or if it went close enough by him where he said he felt like somebody walked up next to him, like he felt a presence, and it startled him. So I don't
yeah,
know. It
yeah.
was odd. I mean, we talked about it for a few minutes and just kind of went on because, like I said, we were Bigfooting. We were there doing a Bigfoot deal, and so we really weren't focused on that and trying to stay on the task at hand. But we talked about it for a minute, and then we just kept on. So.
Exactly. So have you seen any craft, any UFOs out in the woods?
So I have not. Um, I know a couple of our guys, Shane Church and Gus Stone, they were out, I believe it was earlier this year, towards the Bison area. They saw something very strange in the sky, and they had it backed up. Uh, Very oddly enough, we were talking to someone else at the Bigfoot Museum in Oklahoma, in Tallahena, Oklahoma. And I believe there was a guy there that mentioned it, and he asked the date, and they confirmed their dates, and he lives in that area, and he saw something very similar to what they saw. So
Well,
all
there's
I know it was just some type of blinking light that was blinking. I don't know if it was like a strobe or something, and it was just above the trees, kind of cruising along there. So
oftentimes craft orbs, things like that do seem to be connected somehow to areas where Bigfoot is being researched or has been known to exist. Whether there's a correlation or not, I don't know, but sometimes I always just ask the question, see if we can get any further information on that. But they
yeah,
do seem
yeah.
to sometimes go hand in hand together.
Yeah, the sighting maps definitely overlay each other quite a bit. So I did have a park ranger in southeast Oklahoma. So the big deal with me whenever we go out Bigfooting is I love to ask people if they've seen Bigfoot, just random people. Have you ever seen Bigfoot? And I don't care if they're police or just somebody fishing, whatever they're doing. I love to spring it on people. I love to see their initial reaction. And so I had a game warden stop us, ask us what we were doing. And I told him, I said, well, I said, we're out looking for Bigfoot. And he kind of just smiled. And I said, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? And he said, no, sorry. He said, I ain't never seen a Bigfoot. He said, but if you want to talk about this up there, he said, I got lots of stories for you. And that's an Oklahoma game warden. So, of course, at that time, I didn't want to, interview him for anything like that because, like I said, I'm staying super focused on Bigfoot. Uh, but yeah, he said he had a lot of stories for stuff that he's seen in the sky. So, and he's an interesting guy. He does his patrol on horseback, so which is kind of old school, but that probably puts him in some very quiet situations, I guess. So,
And more open too, where you can see the sky more easily,
hmm so
for
if I
sure.
run into him again, I'm going to ask him about some of those things in the sky that he is seeing. So,
Yeah. So have you had any paranormal experiences? You said you kind of kept your thumb on the pulse of that.
yeah, I mean, we could probably do a whole other show of paranormal if you wanted to. Paranormal side is a lot more involved than the Bigfoot side for me. Paranormal stuff has been going on in my life probably since I was, I don't know, maybe 11, 12 years old, somewhere around there. I've always had things happening to me and seeing things and hearing things. Some of it has been very innocent, some of it has been very dark. Um, Yeah, the paranormal side has been kind of wild for me, and I kind of try to keep that regulated a little bit, just because of some things that's happened to me over the last few years, and so I have to be careful with that because I'm a big believer in when you open that and allow that type of energy to come in, it can kind of get wild for you, and especially for somebody like me, and so I keep the door open a little bit, but only cracked. You know what I mean? I don't want to just open it completely and have all that happen to me. But I've had some wild experiences, and it
Well,
has
tell me a
told
little bit
me.
about how do you keep that how do you keep that door closed or nearly closed?
So if I open it up and I'm receiving all that, and I know it's going to sound like I'm some kind of medium, and that's not what this is, but if I'm open to that and seeing that with you know, mentally or however you want to look at that, it seems like it ramps up for me. And when I say ramps up, are you familiar with the Hat Man?
A little.
So the Hat Man has been steadily in my life for probably 8, 9 years. Um, and it's different locations. It doesn't matter where I'm at. He's here. And so I spoke to a psychic about that. When I say psychic, she's actually a witch. I don't know if you know Roxanne Jaspero, but I spoke to her about that. And that's where I learned to kind of shut that door a little bit just because of the things that were going on with that entity in my life. Um, it's not a good one that you want with you or around you. So I have to be careful with that. But as far as visual sightings of him, numerous, from waking up and him standing next to the bed. Uh, Not only me seeing him, but my ex-wife now. But at the time we were married, and she saw him standing in the doorway in our like a foyer area. I've seen him multiple times there. I could almost see him on request. I had a friend I was on the phone with, and he was talking to me, kind of jokingly said, "Have you seen your ghost like that?" And I said, "No, actually, I haven't seen him in several months." I said, "It's been kind of quiet." And all of a sudden, he was just there on the wall, just went down the hall and turned the corner. And so I said, "Oh," I said, "There he is." He just walked by, and thought I was joking, and he said, "Oh, you're funny." And I said, "No, literally." I said, "He just kind of materialized right there in the hallway and went down and turned the corner." I've had jokingly asked for a door to close. We were laying in bed, my ex-wife, and we were laying in bed, and one of the kids left the bathroom light on at the end of the hall, and it was just right in our eye. Our headboard was against that opposite wall, and we were joking about who was going to have to get up out of the blankets to go turn that light off. And I said, we're joking. I'm not. I'm not. And back and forth. And I said, well, let's just have our ghost close the door for us. And I yelled down the hall. I said, "Hey, bud," I said, "could you close that bathroom door and get that light?" And sure enough, that door just closed. And she's not in that world. Like she does not believe anything like that. She doesn't believe in Bigfoot. She doesn't believe in spirits. She doesn't. even though she saw it in the hall and she saw that door close when I asked it, she you could ask her right now and she's going to tell you I don't believe in any of that. But it happened. It was real, you know. Um, we've had you know, my two youngest were probably 14 and 8 at the time. Didn't have my youngest at that point. Um, but we were eating dinner and we were in the living room watching a movie, eating at the coffee table, and all of a sudden we heard this explosion. And looked up and she had made this like some kind of casserole in a glass dish, and it was sitting on the stove, and it had went from the kitchen all the way from across the kitchen and hit the dining room wall and exploded. Now, that's not a slide off the stove and roll. That's about a 20, maybe 22-foot distance for this thing to travel. And it had went off under the kitchen, under the dining room table, and then hit the wall, and like I said, shattered everywhere. And when you have two small kids, the only thing, I'm kind of a jokester anyways. I just kind of joked and said something about the ghost not liking your mom's cooking or something because, they're freaking out a little bit, and so I had to add some humor to it. But it definitely raised the hairs on our necks, when that happened. So um I used to come home and I have a little bit of OCD and I hate open cabinets. I just despise open cabinets. Like I will yell at you if you leave my cabinets open. And I would come home early and all the cabinets in the kitchen would be open. And I was blaming the kids forever, thinking they were just doing it to annoy me, And I finally was like, look, you guys keep leaving these cabinets open, I'm going to ground you. And they're like, my son, he was a little, he's the oldest at the time. He goes, I'm not leaving any cabinets open. Why would I do that? And I go, I don't know. You're getting bowls for cereal and snacks for school or whatever, and you're just leaving everything open. But it's all of them. It's not just one cabinet. It's all of them. And I'm just not wanting to think this thing's messing with me, but the truth is, it was messing with me. It knew it bothered me. And I'd come in and I'd be slamming all these cabinets going through the kitchen, and huffing under my breath about it. But that activity when I was married there with the kids was probably at all-time high. We had moved and I started kind of shutting that out a little bit. Uh, Things went really good for a while. The Pin Man showed up once there, or the Hat Man, I'm sorry, showed up once there. Bigfoot kind of went on, and then of course we separated, divorced, and moved. And in the house I'm in right now, I've seen the Hat Man here maybe 2 or 3 times, I guess. So, and one sighting was very, very terrifying. I'd never seen it do this, but I had a female here that I was dating at the time, and uh, she was sitting at the end of the couch, and I looked to her side and I saw it standing there next to her. And when I say standing there, I say that two-dimensionally. Like it wasn't like a person; it was more like a silhouette against the wall. And I just looked at it and I kind of looked away because I didn't want to alarm her. And it went up the wall and then like across the ceiling into the kitchen and then disappeared. And I guess my eyes watching it, and she asked me, she said, what happened? And I said, nothing. And she goes, what did you just see? What were you looking at? And I said, nothing. And she goes, you have to have been looking at something. And she said, because my entire right side got ice cold. She goes, and you looked over here and I could feel this coldness. She goes, and then I saw your eyes go up to the ceiling. And I said, well, I saw something that looked like, and I don't give her the whole story, but I said, I saw something standing next to you that went up the ceiling across into the kitchen. And it freaked her out. So,
Yeah, it probably would. I can understand
yeah,
that.
yeah, it would anybody, So,
Exactly. So, have you
yeah.
had any positive experiences in the paranormal?
um, yeah, I mean, as far as like, we've done some things with the witching sticks for responses and things like that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those or not, but uh, my daughter seems to be very in tune with that. And I think she's probably a little bit better conduit for that world than I am. And so when we're together doing those things, it can get pretty interesting. We've been doing our own little studies with mental telepathy with each other to see if we could just our own little experiments, as far as if there's any truth to that, and if we're able to, um, people talk about Bigfoot and mind speaking, which I'm not a big believer in that, but the things and experiments that I've done with my daughter as far as projecting images and things like that for her to draw or recognize, we've hit some pretty good home runs with that. So I don't know, it's made me a lot more receptive to what people call the woo, people. I used to be very this thing is very organic. It's a being, it's a person, it's a type of person. Um, and I used to I'll be honest with you, I kind of laugh at some of the woo people, with the stories and things like that, the portals and the all that paranormal stuff with that. But now, after doing my own experimenting with my daughter and stuff, it's made me a lot more receptive to those people. I like hearing their stories. I'm probably never going to be in that group because I still think it's flesh and blood, but I still like hearing their stories because I like to see if anything kind of matches up to some things that my daughter and I have been experimenting with. So,
Have you tried doing some of that viewing on Bigfoot to see where Bigfoot might be or any information you could get about Bigfoot?
so I have tried that once, and it led me to an area that I couldn't get access to, but it was very, um, I guess the results were I don't know, I don't want to say odd, um, but almost conclusive, really. Now I couldn't confirm it conclusive as if there was something in that spot, but I basically surveyed an area of about, probably 12 square miles. And using the sticks, it always pointed me to the same spot. And I thought that was strange. No matter where I went, it would always point me to the same spot. And so I've notated that spot. We have that spot. We have our eye on that spot. Whether or not we'll ever get access to that property, I don't know. But could that change? Of course, time changes these things. I think they move, when they have to. But I would like to do that experiment again to see if I can, and maybe in a whole other area. That's Squatch Creek area. Maybe I go to Bison and try that same idea and see if I can't pinpoint one of these things. So I don't know. I'm mixing paranormal with Bigfoot. That's not my normal thing. So it's making me kind of come out of my shell to do that. So, and I haven't even talked about that with anybody. Honestly, you're the first person that I've shared that with. Typically when we're Bigfoot and we're boots on the ground looking for solid physical evidence or something that we can find and see. So yeah, you're the first person I actually share that info with. So
Well, I can tell you, you have to, when you're looking for Bigfoot, you have to use every resource possible.
you do, and you have to be open-minded. You really do. Because I mean, just a few years ago, I didn't think these things were real, and now they are, and who knows? So
Yeah. Yeah, and it goes on and on. And I wish you well in your search. And it sounds like you're pretty level-headed, so I don't think you'll let the woo get the best of you. So
no, no, I won't. Like I said, I know what they are. I've seen them. I mean, I know what it is. So and I really am a big believer that this is um, obviously not us, but a variation of us, somewhere down the line. Um, and that gets into the whole biblical part of evolution and things like that, whether or not you believe in that. Uh, and that's probably a whole other show for that discussion, but something very similar to us, but it is a human type uh, entity, I guess is the best way to say. So.
Seems to be a lot of people are thinking that, that's for sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you go today. And I really seriously appreciate the discussion and your
Yeah,
honesty
you
and
bet.
openness to tell me all the things that you haven't even shared with other people at this point. So
All
I
right. Yeah.
appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and end now, and I'll let you know when this comes out.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.